I am a 28-year-old woman, and this is the kind of story you would not believe if it did not happen to me. I have a twin brother, and even though we shared the same birthday, we might as well have grown up in two completely different homes. From early on, it was obvious. My parents thought the world of my brother. To them, he was some kind of child prodigy, someone meant for greatness. Me? I was just the girl who liked kicking a soccer ball and hanging out with friends. And because of that, they labeled me the black sheep. They constantly measured me against my brother, like I was always falling short of some invisible standard. It crushed my confidence, even when I was a little kid. Birthdays were the worst. Every year, my brother had these huge parties, balloons, cake, a crowd of his friends, while I was lucky to get a candle and a "happy birthday" tossed in my direction. He had sleepovers all the time. Our house was practically a weekend hangout for him and his friends. But when I asked to have my friends over, that was a hard no. No reason, just not allowed. I remember sitting in my room, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what I had done wrong to be treated so differently. There was only one person in my family who made me feel like I mattered, my grandma. Every time she came by, she brought me my favorite chocolates. Sometimes, she would secretly slip me a few dollars and say, "Get yourself something nice, sweetheart." That meant more to me than she probably knew. As I got older, the unfair treatment turned uglier. What used to feel like favoritism became straight-up emotional abuse. My parents would roll their eyes at my grades, even when I worked hard. They laughed off my hobbies like they were a joke. I was pretty good at sports, actually, I was great. But they did not care. They refused to let me join any after-school activities. According to them, all that mattered was hitting the books, just like my brother. It did not matter what I was good at. If it was not academic, it was worthless in their eyes. Things hit a new low in my second year of high school. I got grounded again, and this time, the reason was beyond ridiculous. I had downloaded Snapchat. That was it. I had not done anything wrong. Like most teenagers, I just wanted to keep in touch with my friends. But my parents treated it like I had committed a serious crime. They said I had broken their trust. The real reason? They had this strict, unspoken rule that I was not allowed to have a social life. They did not want me texting, calling, or hanging out with anyone. It felt like I was living in a prison, while my brother had the keys to freedom. And no matter what I did, I was always the one getting punished. Things really blew up one night after the Snapchat situation. My parents completely lost it. I mean, they went absolutely crazy. They stormed into my room, started yelling, and began throwing my things around like I was some kind of criminal. Then, as if that was not enough, they actually took my bedroom door off its hinges. Just ripped it right off. They stood there and told me flat out, "You do not get privacy anymore. Not in this house." I was 16. Imagine trying to exist in your own home with no door, no safe space, nothing. What hurt even more was that my twin brother just stood there. He saw it all, the yelling, the mess, the emotional wreck I had become, and instead of stepping in or saying something to calm things down, he used it as fuel. The way our parents treated me gave him a golden opportunity, and he took full advantage of it. He started lying about me. Constantly. And because Mom and Dad already had this picture of me as the problem child, they ate up everything he said without question. If something went missing in the house, a phone, cash, whatever, he would say, "She probably took it." And just like that, I would get punished. No questions asked. At school, it was no better. He made fun of me in front of my friends, cracking jokes about how I looked or how I dressed. It was like he was trying to tear down every part of me that made me feel human. But despite all that, I had friends. Real ones. I was the kind of person who made people feel welcome. I smiled, I talked, I listened. My brother, on the other hand, struggled socially. He kept to himself, felt awkward in groups, and I could tell it bothered him that I had something he did not. That jealousy hit its peak on our 14th birthday. My parents had planned another one of those typical birthday celebrations, more focused on him than me. But this time, nobody showed up for him. Not a single friend. I still do not know why they bailed. Meanwhile, my friend surprised me by taking me out for ice cream. We laughed, took silly pictures, and just had a good time. It was simple, but it meant the world to me. And apparently, it lit a fire under my brother. He was furious. Not just upset, furious. After that, he went into full revenge mode. He started spreading rumors about me at school, telling people that I was some spoiled, violent brat who bullied him at home. And the worst part? People believed him. He even started hurting himself to make it look like I was abusing him. Yeah, punching his own face, bruising his own shoulder. Then he would show up at school with a black eye, walking around like a wounded soldier, telling everyone I had done it. It was terrifying. I had no idea he was going that far. And when our parents asked him how he got hurt, he would just laugh it off and say, "Oh, it happened during football with the guys." They never questioned it. Looking back, it is still hard to believe someone so close to me could do something so twisted, and get away with it. The bruises my brother gave himself started turning heads. People began whispering. His story, his twisted, made-up version of reality, was spreading fast, and to my horror, folks were actually buying it. At first, it was small stuff. Friends who used to wave and joke with me in the hallways suddenly looked the other way. Messages stopped coming in. Group hangouts I used to be invited to just didn't include me anymore. I felt the shift before I understood it. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and I had turned into a stranger overnight. Apparently, I had become the violent, spoiled twin people wanted nothing to do with. One day, I couldn't take the cold shoulders anymore, so I pulled aside someone who used to be my closest friend. I asked her straight up what was going on. And that's when she told me. She said my brother had been telling everyone these awful stories. That I hit him. That I bullied him because he was the favorite at home. That I had a bad temper and lashed out. I just stood there, stunned. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My own twin, someone I had known literally my whole life, was telling lies about me so convincing that even people who had known me for years started to believe him. It crushed me. My heart was pounding, my throat tight. After school that day, I confronted him. Told him I knew what he was doing and begged him to stop. I did not yell. I did not curse. I just wanted it to end. He looked me dead in the eyes and smiled. Smiled. Then he said, "You deserve to rot alone." That was the moment I realized this was not just sibling rivalry. This was real hatred. I wanted to go to my parents, to tell them everything, but I was terrified. They always took his side. Why would this be any different? Meanwhile, I was becoming more and more isolated. My world, once full of people and connection, was crumbling. The worst part? I had never done a thing to deserve it. I had always been kind, always open to making new friends. But none of that mattered now. His lies were reaching everyone, even teachers. I would catch them glancing at me, whispering behind classroom doors. It was like I had been cast in a role I never auditioned for. In their eyes, I had become the bad guy. And then, the principal got involved. I got called into the office one afternoon. My brother was already there. So were my parents. I sat down, my hands shaking. The principal looked me in the eye and said, "We need to talk about what's been going on." I thought maybe, just maybe, my brother would tell the truth now that things were serious. That he'd stop this whole charade. But no. He leaned into the lies even harder. He sat there and told the principal that yes, I hit him. That I bullied him because I was jealous of how much our parents loved him. He made up entire stories about how I would corner him at home, scream at him, and punch him when no one was looking. My jaw dropped. It was like watching a stranger tell a story I had never heard before, only it was about me. And everyone in the room was listening. My mom started crying. Crying. She pulled my brother into her arms like he was some kind of war survivor. My dad put a hand on his shoulder and told him how brave he was for finally speaking up. And me? I just sat there, trying not to cry myself, pleading with the principal to listen. To believe me. To understand that none of it was real. But the damage was already done. It felt like I was drowning, like I was stuck underwater, reaching up for air that just would not come. Every time I tried to speak up, to clear my name, my brother doubled down on his lies. He sat there calmly, spinning this story about how I was filled with rage and used him as a punching bag every day. My mother clung to him like he was some kind of fragile victim, and every time I looked her way, she just gave me this heartbreaking glare, like I was a stranger, or worse, a monster. It was like being stuck in a nightmare with no way out. My principal gave me a cold stare and said the school had a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. He told me straight up, these accusations alone were enough to justify a suspension. I broke down right there in his office. I was crying, shaking, pleading with him to listen, to believe that I had not laid a finger on my brother. I tried so hard to explain, but he just shook his head slowly, like it was out of his hands. "You'll be suspended for 10 days, he said. Others need to see what happens when someone bullies their sibling like this. My stomach dropped. 10 days. It felt like I had been hit by a truck. I begged him again, tears running down my face, telling him none of it was true. But he would not budge. Then my parents stood up, red-faced, furious, embarrassed. They did not say a word to me. Just grabbed their stuff and stormed out, expecting me to follow. I wanted to stay. I wanted to keep explaining. But I had no choice. When we got home, I figured I would be grounded or get the silent treatment, but I never imagined what came next. My dad, without saying a word, started packing my clothes into a suitcase. I stood there, frozen. What are you doing?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. My mom looked confused too, asking him what was going on. And my dad snapped. "She's not living under the same roof as our son. Not anymore." I dropped to my knees. I was crying, shaking, pleading. I turned to my brother, begging him to finally tell the truth, to admit what he had done. But he just stared at me like I was nothing. Cold. Empty. My dad kept packing, then dragged my suitcase to the front hallway and tossed it to the floor like it was trash. I ran over, grabbed his leg, crying so hard I could barely breathe, begging him not to throw me out. But all he said was, "You don't belong in this house. Bullies are not welcome here. Let your grandmother take you if she wants to." I remember just sitting there, surrounded by my own stuff, feeling like the world had turned inside out. Eventually, my grandmother pulled up. She walked in, saw me sitting there with swollen eyes, and immediately got to work gathering my things. She packed everything up with quiet focus, helped me into the passenger seat of her car, and buckled me in like I was 5 years old again. Then, with this fire in her eyes, she walked right up to the front door and rang the bell. My dad opened it, and before he could even speak, she let him have it. She raised her voice, called him out for kicking out his own daughter, and warned him that if he ever came near me again, if he so much as tried to reach out, she would not hesitate to call the police or Child Protective Services. She made it clear that what he had done was dangerous, and if push came to shove, it could land him behind bars. My mom tried to shift the blame, saying it was my fault, that I brought it on myself. But Grandma was not having it. She stood tall, unwavering. "She is a child," she said, "and no child deserves to be treated like garbage." For the first time in my life, I saw just how strong my grandmother really was. And in that moment, she became more than just the one person who had always cared. She became my protector. My grandmother never backed down. She stood her ground, stared my parents in the face, and made it crystal clear, she believed me. Not their version. Mine. And that meant the world to me. We drove away that night, pulling away from the only home I had ever known. And as much as that house held painful memories, it still shattered something inside me to leave it like that. Once we got to her place, I crashed onto the bed and broke down. I cried for hours. I couldn't eat, no matter how many times Grandma came in, gently asking me to try. I felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me. Eventually, I opened up to her. Told her everything, what my brother had done, the lies, the injuries he faked, the betrayal at school. She listened closely, and when I was done, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I believe you." That sentence stuck with me. For once, someone actually heard me. Someone actually saw me. After 10 long days, my suspension was over. But walking back into school felt like walking into a battlefield. The same old hallways looked different, colder. People stared, some whispered. Most just looked through me. The lies had settled in, and they were not going anywhere. My brother kept pretending I did not exist. He walked right past me in the halls like I was invisible. By then, he had found a new group of friends, kids who thought he was the poor, innocent brother who got beaten up by his evil twin. No matter how many times I tried to set the record straight, no one listened. Nobody wanted to hear my side anymore. I became the outcast. The label stuck to me like glue, the girl who hurt her brother. The girl with the anger issues. The one to avoid. In class, I kept to myself. In the cafeteria, I sat alone. The only conversations I had were with teachers, and even some of them looked at me like they were waiting for me to explode. I was completely alone. My parents never called. Not once. No messages. No check-ins. It was like they had cut me off without a second thought. The only person who reminded me I was not broken was my grandmother. She told me, every single day, "This is not your fault. And life is not over yet." Those words carried me through high school. I graduated with solid grades, but more than anything, I was just relieved to be done with it. I packed up, said goodbye to the quiet little town I grew up in, and headed off to college. And that was the first time I felt real freedom. No one was watching over my shoulder. No one was comparing me to someone else. No one was making me feel like less. I started meeting people who liked me for me. I made real friends. Friends who saw my personality, not a rumor. Sure, I still carried scars. Emotional ones. But for the first time in my life, I had space to breathe. Space to heal. College gave me a fresh start. And I was determined to make the most of it. It was during college that I stumbled onto something unexpected: content writing. I had always dreamed of being a writer, but somewhere along the way, I let go of that dream. I figured it was not realistic, not something you could rely on to pay the bills. Still, I needed a way to earn some extra cash, so I gave freelancing a shot. I signed up on a bunch of freelancing websites and started applying for jobs. To my surprise, I landed a few gigs pretty quickly, and not just small-time stuff either. Some of the clients were pretty well known. That was the beginning. Slowly, I built up a portfolio. I juggled my coursework during the day and wrote late into the nights. I never once asked my parents for money, not a single cent. By the time graduation rolled around, I had a choice to make. Go the traditional route and get a corporate job, or take a risk on something that had been quietly growing for years. I chose the risk. I decided to go full-time as a content writer. And thanks to the solid relationships I had built with clients, I had steady work coming in. Some of them even brought me onto multiple projects at once. Being able to support myself through something I loved, writing, changed everything. It gave me freedom. And more than that, it gave me the chance to explore the world. I started traveling. Packed a bag, booked cheap flights, and set off to live like a digital nomad. It was not always glamorous. I had to budget carefully and hustle to keep my income steady, but every new place I visited chipped away at the pain I carried from my past. There is still so much of the world left to see, but I have already seen more than I ever imagined I could. Through it all, the one person who felt like home was my grandmother. I adored her. She was heartbroken when I moved out, but she understood. She knew I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. Even though my life got busy, I made sure she never felt forgotten. On weekends, I would come by to share meals with her, or we would just sit on the porch, chatting about everything, from old family stories to silly things that happened that week. Sometimes, I would help her around the house or walk with her through the park. It was our little routine, and I looked forward to it more than anything. Just recently, I wrapped up one of the biggest projects of my career. I cannot say the brand name due to contracts, but trust me, it was a huge deal. I worked on blog content and product descriptions for them, and once the job was done, I asked the team if they could leave some feedback on my freelancing profiles. They did, gladly. Their reviews were incredible, and I took a few screenshots and posted them on my Instagram. I knew it was a career milestone, and I wanted to celebrate it. The response was overwhelming. Other content writers reached out to congratulate me, reposted my story, and spread the word. Even strangers started messaging me, asking if I could help them with their websites or online content. That was how I landed even more clients, people who saw my work and wanted a piece of it. Some of my extended relatives saw the post, too. A few even reached out, offering congratulations, the same people who had not said a word to me in years. But the most surprising message came from someone I never expected, my college principal. A few months ago, something happened that I never saw coming. My old college principal reached out to me. He said he had seen some of my work online and was impressed. Then he asked if I would be willing to come back to campus and speak at a seminar about building a career in content writing. I was surprised, and honestly, nervous. Public speaking has never been my thing. I am more comfortable behind a keyboard than a microphone. But something about the invitation felt right. Like it was time to face that part of my past on my own terms. So, I said yes. When I stood in front of that classroom, looking out at all those curious, eager faces, I felt something shift. I told them my story, not just the professional side, but the real journey. I spoke about the pain, the loneliness, the hard work, and the tiny victories that helped me build something for myself from scratch. And to my surprise, they listened. Really listened. That moment felt like everything had come full circle. The girl who once walked through those same halls as an outcast was now there to inspire others. Clips from the seminar ended up being shared on Facebook groups, and soon, I started getting messages from people saying my story resonated with them. Some even said it gave them the courage to chase their own goals. That meant everything to me. And just last week, something even bigger happened. I was invited to appear on a local television program, a segment about the rise of digital careers and the benefits of content writing. At first, I was a bundle of nerves. But then I remembered all the people who had reached out to thank me for being honest about my journey. That gave me the courage to go through with it. On air, I talked about how client feedback can open doors, the importance of putting yourself out there, and how even something as small as a kind review or a shared post can change your whole career. Once the interview aired, I clipped a few highlights and posted them on Instagram. Not for the likes or the attention, but because I was proud. That post? It traveled fast. Suddenly, distant cousins and family members I had not heard from in years were messaging me, congratulating me. A few even reposted the clips. You see, my parents never really talked about me to the rest of the family. Most of them had no idea that I was working with well-known brands, running a successful business, or getting invited to speak on television. But now the word was out. And I guess it must have reached my parents too, because just a few days after that interview aired, I was in the middle of another project, phone on silent, fully focused. When I finally wrapped up for the day and checked my phone, I saw 6 missed calls. All from the same person. My mother. My heart sank a little. It had been so long since I had seen her name on my screen that it almost did not feel real. I hesitated. I stared at the screen for a long time before I finally pressed call back. She picked up on the first ring. When my mom answered the phone, the first thing she did was congratulate me. Her voice was strangely cheerful, almost too cheerful. Then I heard my dad in the background, chiming in like he had been sitting next to her the whole time. They both started asking how I had been. How was life? How was work? I answered politely, still in shock, not really thinking much of it. It had been years since we had spoken, so maybe, just maybe, this was their way of making amends. But then, the tone shifted. Out of nowhere, they started asking how much money I was making. That was the moment everything clicked into place. I paused for a second, then told them, "That's really none of your business." My dad chuckled and said something like, "Come on, we're family. You don't have to be shy." I kept it short and said I was doing just fine. Financially stable. Nothing more. And that is when my mom changed gears completely. She said things had been tough lately. That since retiring, money had been tight. She talked about how the house was falling apart, cracked walls, old pipes, leaky roof, and how they just did not have enough in savings to fix it. I could feel my stomach twist. Her words were sweet on the surface, but I knew where this was going. She said, "Your success has given us hope." Hope for what? I just sat there on the phone, stunned. For years, I had been nothing to them. They did not want to hear from me when I was struggling, when I was kicked out, when I was alone. They had not sent a single text when I was suspended or even when I graduated. But now that they saw me doing well, now that my face was on a television screen and my name was floating around family WhatsApp groups, suddenly, they remembered I existed. And apparently, they thought that now, after all this time, I owed them something. Right after my television interview aired, my parents did not waste any time. My mom's voice softened, as if she was carefully choosing her words. She said, "We saw your interview today, and we were thinking maybe you could help us out. The house really needs some work, and well, we thought, maybe, since you're doing so well." Then my dad cut in. "After all, we're still your family. You should not hesitate to share some of what you've earned with us." I blinked in disbelief. Was this seriously happening? I tried to stay calm, but my voice cracked with frustration. "Are you seriously asking me for money? You guys have not spoken to me in years, not when I was suspended, not when I graduated, not even once to check in. And now you want me to pay for your house?" There was a moment of silence. And then my mom snapped. "You're being a real bitch about this. You owe us. We're your parents." My dad backed her up. "We raised you. We took care of you. This is the least you can do." That was it. I had held my tongue long enough. And just as I was about to let it all out, an idea hit me. Something that would make them understand, once and for all, that they did not get to rewrite history. So I took a breath and said, "All right. I'll help you. But only if you agree to one thing." There was curiosity in my dad's voice. "What thing?" I did not hesitate. "You admit the truth, publicly. In front of our entire family and anyone else you once shared your lies with. You admit that it was my brother who created all those rumors. You acknowledge that he manipulated you, and that you turned your backs on me without a second thought. I want you to say it, out loud, just like you once believed it all out loud." That landed like a bomb. My dad scoffed, then asked, "What's the point of airing this in public? Why humiliate everyone? Why not just talk about it privately?" My mom jumped in, saying, "This is unnecessary. Why drag others into it? We're trying to make peace." But I stood firm. "No. That's the deal. No backroom apologies. No silent phone calls years later. If you want help, then the truth needs to be out in the open, just like your accusations once were. I want the same audience for the apology that I had for the shame." The conversation started to spiral. My dad raised his voice again. "I'm still your father. It's your responsibility to help your family when they need it." My mom added, "We took care of you. You would not have what you have if it weren't for us. Do the right thing." I actually laughed. Not out of humor, but out of disbelief. "You took care of me? You kicked me out. You left me with nothing. Grandma is the one who raised me after that. She's my family, not you." Their voices rose. They got angrier. But I was done. "I'm not budging," I told them. "If you want to be in my life, if you want my help, the truth has to come first. Otherwise, do not call me again." And with that, I hung up. Since then, they have been calling constantly, texts, missed calls, voicemails. I have not answered a single one. They made their choice years ago. Now, I am just making mine. If I'm being honest, I'm starting to regret ever calling them back that day. Part of me thought maybe things could be different, that after all these years, maybe my parents had changed. But now I see it for what it was. They were never calling to reconnect. They were calling for a favor. And lately, I've been asking myself, would I really be a bad person if I chose not to help them? Would that really make me heartless? Or would it simply be choosing self-respect over obligation? Update 1. It's been a whirlwind of a week. After I first shared my story, the amount of support I received from strangers, from people who have walked similar paths, has been overwhelming in the best way. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel alone. Everyone who reached out had the same message: you owe them nothing. And I needed to hear that. The truth is, I gave my parents that ultimatum on purpose, because I knew they would never accept it. I knew they would never, not in a million years, stand in front of our family and admit what they did to me or what my brother put me through. No matter what they know now, even if deep down they finally see how wrong they were, they'll never do anything that makes my brother look bad. They never did before, and they're not about to start now. And today, well, today just proved that again. My brother texted me. He must have heard that I was still refusing to take my parents' calls, and this is what he sent. Hey sis, it's been a long time. Every day without you in my life has been great. I heard you gave mom and dad some crazy ultimatum. They're never going to go along with that, you know that, right? They never loved you, and they'll never throw me under the bus. Yeah, I lied about you 15 years ago. But it's been a long time, so stop being so selfish and move on. You're unmarried and childless anyway, so what else are you even doing with your life? The least you could do is help mom and dad fix up the house. Try being a better daughter. Reading that message felt like a knife to the chest. The complete lack of remorse. The way he brushed off everything he did to me as if it was just some teenage prank. The nerve to bring up the fact that I'm unmarried and childless, as if that somehow disqualifies me from having boundaries. As if that makes me less human. Less worthy of respect. And to suggest that I should now support our parents financially, after everything? That was the final blow. He did not send that message to reconnect. He sent it to manipulate me. To make me feel small again. To remind me of the role they always wanted me to play, the quiet, obedient one who just takes it. But I am not that girl anymore. Fueled by anger, but also clarity, I sat down at my computer and opened a blank email. It was time to stop pretending. Time to stop protecting people who had never once protected me. I wrote the truth. To my parents. To my aunts. To my uncles. To the cousins who had reached out after seeing me on television. I sent that email to every single person who once heard their side of the story, but never mine. I told them everything. How I grew up under a roof where love was conditional and approval was reserved for my brother. How I was shut out, mocked, punished, and finally thrown out onto the street like I was nothing. How my brother's lies at school nearly destroyed my reputation, and how my parents never questioned him, not once. And how, if it weren't for my grandmother, I probably wouldn't be alive today. I laid it all bare. Not out of revenge, but because silence had cost me enough. At the end of that email, I asked everyone to read something very important, a message my brother had sent me just days earlier. I attached a screenshot of his text. In it, clear as day, he admitted to lying about me. 15 years of silence, of damage, of heartbreak, all wrapped up in one smug little confession. I wanted people to see the truth with their own eyes. I wanted the lies to finally fall apart. I had just hit send an hour earlier when the realization hit me. Once they read this, all hell would break loose. And it did. Update 2, 1 month later. The fallout was swift. My inbox lit up. My phone buzzed with notifications. And for the first time in my life, the truth was louder than the lies. Relatives, the ones who used to believe my parents without question, started reaching out. Some were shocked. Others were heartbroken. More than a few apologized, saying they had no idea what had really happened all those years ago. Many of them said, "We wish we had known. We would have stood by you." Of course, not everyone reacted that way. My parents and my brother, they exploded. The messages came pouring in. Angry, defensive, manipulative, some even outright threatening. At first, I tried to ignore them. But when the messages turned abusive and violent in tone, I knew I had to protect myself. So I contacted a lawyer. He immediately drafted and sent them a cease and desist letter. A formal legal warning telling them to stop contacting me. That if they continued, there would be real consequences. Apparently, that was enough to scare them straight. Since then, there has been radio silence. And honestly, it feels like peace. Through all of this, my grandmother never once wavered. She told me I did the right thing, that telling the truth was long overdue. She is my rock. My constant. And the only family I truly need. Update 3, 2 months later. I never imagined I would say this, but things in my life are finally good. Professionally, my content writing business is thriving. I am getting more invitations to speak on podcasts and panels. Seminar requests continue to come in. Slowly but surely, I have carved out a name for myself, not just as a writer, but as someone who fought hard to reclaim her story. Personally, I've never felt more grounded. Last month, I took a week off just to spend time with my grandmother. She has gotten into gardening lately, and let me tell you, she knows everything about flowers and herbs. We shared meals, walked through her garden, and had conversations that filled my soul. Those moments are now my most treasured memories. And as for my parents and brother? Not a word. Thanks to the cease and desist, they know better than to try anything. And that silence? It speaks volumes. Lately, I have also started therapy. I realize that as much as I have moved on, there are wounds that still need healing. I'm finally giving myself permission to do that. To truly heal. I think this will be my final update. My story isn't about revenge or holding on to pain. It's about standing up for yourself when nobody else will. It's about breaking cycles. About choosing peace over chaos. I have a life I built on my own, one filled with honesty, strength, and purpose. And moving forward, that's exactly the life I intend to live.